to pull up that confidence to say, I know what I'm doing, I'm good at what I do, so I should be paid for what I'm worth. So pulling yourself up to that, right? Going that extra mile in putting the word out there that your organization is willing, committed, and ready to do what it takes to bring more women to the table, right, into the organization. So that's very important. Making sure your culture is adequate enough and well enough set up for them to feel welcome, for them to feel like they belong, and for them to feel like they can contribute.
Good morning. So today I have Soumya with us, who is a tech-savvy human resources professional with extensive experience in talent acquisition strategy, social media recruitment, as well as diversity recruitment. Let's welcome Soumya on 10 Minutes of Hiring Wisdom, where she will tell us why it is important to have a diverse work field, how it brings in different perspectives, and what she's learned along the way. Hi, Soumya. How are you doing today?
Hey Manal, I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. So, Soumya, can you tell us about your role so far, role, and where you currently work?
Sure, sure. So I work at a company called Riverbed Technology, and my role is a recruiting manager, diversity programs. So my focus in this role is all about diversity hiring, strategy, best practices, and what we should be doing internally also for inclusive hiring, right? So it's not just about bringing people from different backgrounds, but also making sure your culture is adequate enough and well enough set up for them to feel welcome, for them to feel like they belong, and for them to feel like they can contribute at the same levels as other folks in the organization. So that's more of what I do. More focused on, I think, talent acquisition aspect of it, than the internal belonging piece. But I'm kind of a little in between. My hands are a little bit in between all of those things.
No, no, that makes sense. I think leaders always wear multiple hats, and you're definitely wearing different multiple hats at the end of the day. So I'd love to understand, Soumya. You specifically work with a tech company. I think when it comes to diversity, usually for the longest time we've seen men dominate the tech space and
Mhm.
everything. So how do you make sure you find really good women talent who can come in, share their perspectives, and attract them to work with your company specifically?
Sure, sure. Great question. So, yes, I think even today, if you look at it, whether it is in the US or globally, right? I think you're usually at like that 75% male and the rest female. That's usually the, I think, the tech space especially, right? So one of the things, and I will say, we are working towards changing that even at Riverbed, right? So one of the things I'm looking at in terms of making sure we actually are reaching out to more female candidates for different roles across the board. It's not necessary that they're only hardcore technical roles, but also women in tech in general, right? So I look at reaching out to various groups. It's not necessary that you always have to approach these large organizations, who have a huge membership in terms of how many people are part of their organization, but also looking at some grassroots level groups that you can work with, right? Or make sure you have a combination of some groups and some organizations. So let's say I'll reach out to an organization like Women Who Code or Women Hack or Women in Tech, right? So there's different groups like that. There's organizations, and then there are also smaller groups local to your regions, maybe local to your communities, that are maybe socializing and kind of coming together to discuss issues, to discuss topics and stuff. So being a part of those conversations, right? So there's another organization called Remote Women and Remote People of Color. So, I've kind of like reached out to them. I try to talk to them a little bit to say, okay, there are certain roles which are remote, right? And then we are open to anybody. But then I think going that extra mile in putting the word out there that your organization is willing, committed, and ready to do what it takes to bring more women to the table, right, into the organization. So that's very important. So there's that awareness piece of it. And then there is, I mean, part of what you say, people should know that your company is doing it or willing to do it. That's number one, right? So we do a lot of that. But I think, yeah, definitely putting the word out internally also within your own organization, among your female employees and colleagues to say, hey, we're doing this. We are committed to doing more of this. Can you please put a word out in your networks, reaching out to those networks that you have in your personal and professional spaces? Um, Maybe your own colleagues or members of certain organizations and groups you're not aware of, putting a word out there to say, hey, if you know anybody in your organization or your membership group, please connect. I will always look, and I think making the time to have exploratory conversations with early career talent or folks who are making a transition from one area to a different area or field. And generally talking about your company and what you do, and even if it's not like a immediate fill job opportunity you have for them right away, but having those contacts, right, establishing those connections, having those conversations to say, hey, how can I help? Is there anything else we can do? I think that definitely helps. And I think I've been doing more of that in the last couple months than signing up for some major big event or signing up for a major career fair, getting a booth out there, and then waiting for people to come to us. I think it's more important to go to where people are than sitting and expecting them to think about you and then come to you.
No, no, I think that makes sense because you do need to put your foot out of the door to make sure that you are well known. Because at the end of the day, the market's really hot these days.
Yes.
People are constantly chasing after the best candidates. So
Yeah.
you need to go the extra mile to ensure that you can represent yourself as a company that focuses on diversity, that focuses on giving women a chance. And that will automatically attract a lot of talent just because I think companies that are self aware always create a culture in which people feel much more comfortable. Which brings me to my next question.
Sure.
You mentioned specifically about the culture and creating a culture which is set up to put people for success, Somia. So, would love to understand. I think women. For example, if I enter the tech space and everything, I might be a bit intimidated if I'm surrounded by men who are in the tech space constantly. So
Hmm.
how do you create a culture in which women understand that it's okay to fail? It will regardless be a learning journey for them, and each failure can lead them towards success eventually. So what about your company's culture is something that allows people to feel comfortable and allows them to learn as much?
Well put. So I think one of the things I've observed is we in general uh, look for mentors in our professional journeys. I think more so for women to be able to have a person to guide through their career journey. And that could be outside the organization or it could be a part of your organizations, right? So I think developing a mentorship program for folks, let's say if you're talking about women in sales, in tech, or women in tech, right? So you're talking about, let's, as an example, starting with those two groups. And those two groups are heavily male centric. So I think even to be able to convince women to come into your organization where your teams are male centric, that's a challenge in itself. But once you've brought them in, I think the first thing is to say that, hey, these are the mentors. Here are some mentors you can go to, reach out to. Um, Whether it is something about a particular task on hand, or you're looking to grow, or you want to move into a leadership opportunity eventually, here are some folks you can reach out to. They've lived this experience, so they are better able to assist you and support you, right? Guide you through. So that's, I think, very important. Also, paying people what they are worth, especially when you're talking about women. Personal experience, I think we all kind of go through that. At least I've kind of gone through that, where you'd say, you know second guessing yourself, what we call the Stockholm syndrome, right? Like you second guess yourself to say, oh, am I really worth it? Or to pull up that confidence to say, I know what I'm doing, I'm good at what I do, so I should be paid for what I'm worth. So pulling yourself up to that, right? So I think having those conversations, providing those spaces for women to kind of connect with each other, talk about things, right? So if you're talking about an employee resource group for women, like we have at Riverbed, we have an employee resource group for women. We conduct events. We kind of also consider that as a safe space for somebody to have that interaction, right? So any kind of an issue that they have, they actually can go and talk. So providing those safe spaces for women, right? uh, and I think policies and benefits obviously come with the territory to say how inclusive are your policies, how inclusive are your benefits when you're having a decent sized female population within your employee workforce. So being able to provide some of those flexible work, I think flexible work environment is one. Parental leave for both male and female, but again, you do see that there's a substantial portion of that falling more on the women than men. Things are changing now for better, but I think in general, if you observe, so what kind of parental leave policies? So I think creating a space where women don't have to second guess themselves, at the same time be confident and also know that there are no repercussions or reprimands for being out there representing themselves, standing up for themselves, talking for themselves, and wanting to get those opportunities and benefits provided by the company. Shouldn't come at, oh, that's aggressive, right? That's not aggressive. You're just being more self-aware, self-confident, and you know what you want and you're asking for it. So I think when you have executive leadership and when you have senior leaders in the organization who understand that just as much as what a person individually what they bring to the table, it should be, I think, irrespective of the gender of the person or irrespective of who they are. If the leadership is aware and open to providing those opportunities, I think more folks can thrive, right? More folks can succeed. So I think, yeah, mentorship, safe spaces, um, parity in pay. I think, and then of course policies and benefits. Like what are some things that can hinder? What can you do to remove those little challenges and provide a more open, I guess, more open communication channels? All these things I think definitely will help in creating that culture so that not just leadership but also your own teams, your colleagues, there should be a sense of, okay, this is not something extraordinary being done. This is way to go. This is the new norm. This is like the normal. This is what is supposed to look like normal. And yeah, initially I think when you're starting off doing all these things, it'll be like, oh my god, we're doing this, but I think it's just a matter of adjusting yourself and people around you to get used to that fact that this is how it should always be, and that's what we are doing right now. So I think that's
No,
important.
no, that's very important. I think there's always a trickle down effect, right? If the leaders at the top understand that it is important to take initiative, eventually people that are down the hierarchy will automatically see that,
Yes.
okay, these leaders are doing something. And just
Hmm.
because they represent certain values, they represent a certain mission, a certain different in perspective, we need to do something about it as well. So it's interesting to see that you mentioned the different components of it. And I
Definitely.
love the part that you mentioned that women, for example, they tend to doubt themselves, whereas men, even if they might not be qualified enough, they will still go ahead and put themselves in a way, because at the end of the day, it's a confidence in yourself and how
Hmm.
much you can learn, which is something that puts you at a better light in front of other people. So
True.
thank you so much for sharing that, Soumya.
Sure.
Soumya, last question would be, your company is growing. Would love to understand some of the positions that you might be actively hiring for, so if people are searching for careers, they know what to apply for.
Wonderful. So yeah, so as I said, Riverbed is a technology company, and what we focus is on visibility and acceleration solutions within the digital experience management platform. Let's say, we're talking about um, unified observability platforms. We're talking about acceleration, solutions that we're offering to our customers, and some of the roles we have open. I think we kind of I will say that with the whole current market situation and how things are going, I think there might be a bit of a lag or a slow or a pause in how things are run. But in general, I think some of the opportunities we are looking for a lot of sales folks across. And we are a global company, so it's not necessarily restricted to the Americas. We also have multiple offices and teams in EMEA region, Europe and Middle East, and we also have teams in APJ. Like we have a team in India, we have teams in Australia, Singapore. So sales opportunities are across the board. We also have engineering centers. What we have done is we've also expanded into other countries outside US. So talk about Romania, talk about Israel, talk about India, UK. So we do have R&D teams there as well. So we are hiring for a lot of engineering teams, people in those regions as well. So engineering, sales. At some point of time, I think later in the year, we'll also be looking at expanding some of the other roles, let's say in HR and marketing. Marketing also has a couple of roles open right now. If you're into channel marketing, we also have a position in our I think it's called supply chain operations. There's a senior leadership role open there, which I think is active. I would be looking for a recruitment marketing specialist for our own recruiting team at some point later in the year. So that's something to look out for. But if anybody is looking today and they are interested in any of the fields that I mentioned, they can definitely check us out at riverbed.com and see. And I'm happy to connect with folks, whether on LinkedIn or otherwise. Happy to chat because I always believe in, having those connections and exploratory conversations, even if it's like a 5 minute chat, quick chat to connect and say, hey, you know, what do you do? What do I do? This is what we have in any interest or whatever the case. So definitely happy to connect with folks as well.
No, no, the power of networking these days is so important because you never know how connections can turn into something more. Even if you might have an opportunity that might not be suited later, it can always be something later on as well. So thank you so much, Soumya. That was it. Our time is up. It was a pleasure learning about you, your experiences, the way you are making sure that women feel inclusive, especially in fields that they weren't very comfortable in the past. It's definitely great to see that women are finally taking initiative and understanding their value when it comes to making a difference in the tech space.
Thank you so much, Minal. Appreciate the opportunity.
Of course.